Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Revolution Mindset Session 19. Today we're going to be looking at tips and tricks to implement our habits. Now, if you're tuned in, please say hi, let me know you're here, let me know where you're tuning in from. And also, if you're watching on the replay, let me know you're watching this. Let me know any questions that you have as we go through today's session. And as always, before we open up and talk about tips and tricks to implement your habits, I want to know what wins, what achievements, whether big, whether small, you've made over the last week so we can share and celebrate them today. Remember, part of our progress, part of our success is that energy and that momentum and that acknowledgement of the progress that we're making. If we keep up that reward, if we keep up that energy, we are going to succeed to heights that we never thought were possible. So share your wins. I want to hear them. If they're big, if they're small, let me know below. I can see we've got a few people tuned in. Please don't be shy. We've got Adele tuned in. Thank you so much for being here, Adele. Anya, it's great to see you here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you taking your time to learn more about tips and tricks to implement habits. Now, what we're going to look at in today's session, well, first of all, we're going to recap on the 4 laws of habit building. It's important to recap on this because there is tips and tricks within those 4 laws that we can use to make sure that we can successfully implement new habits. We're then going to look at the power of small action steps, how we underestimate the power of small steps and small progress, and how it's going to be those small steps and that progress that we make that is going to help us succeed with our habits. And then I'm going to share 5. There's lots more strategy and tips that I have, but for the time that we have today in this 28 minutes remaining, I'm going to share 5 tips and tricks that have worked for me in terms of strategies to really implement and make sure that I can succeed with my habits. So that's what we're going to look at today. I'm going to see if we've got any wins coming through. I can see Priya's tuned in. That's absolutely wonderful. Adele is sharing a win for the week for her is that she stepped out of her comfort zone. Let's celebrate that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Adele. It's amazing that you stepped out your comfort zone. Stepping out of a comfort zone is always a great win because we move from the kind of fixed mindset into the growth mindset and into the growth zone, from the comfort zone to the growth zone. Really great work, Adele. Thank you so much for sharing this. If you're tuned in now, let me know your wins so we can celebrate this with you. It's important for us to acknowledge the progress that we are making. Just a quick recap on our last session. So in our last session, we looked at the 4 laws of habit building, and the key point was to choose and implement our habits wisely because they play a huge part in defining who we are. So we reflected, we thought about our habits, we thought about how we can start to implement them, how we can build them, and how we can choose them wisely. And the quote that I want to open up with today while you're sharing your achievements is a quote from Jim Rohn. So Jim Rohn, author of From Good to Great, if you haven't heard of him, really great, inspirational guy. He says that motivation is what gets you started, but habit is what keeps you going. So if you're a person that finds yourself, you get those sparks of motivation, you feel motivated, but then you stop, it's the habit that you're failing on. It's the habits that are going to keep you going. So how do you turn that motivation into a habit? How do you find the commitment to implement that habit and keep up with those small steps and progress? So I'm just going through. Is anybody sharing their wins? Adrian's tuned in. Thank you so much for being here, Adrian. It is wonderful to see you as well. Priya saying truly amazing. Anya shared her win. Anya has said that I got 4 new clients already, had a discovery session with them, another 5 scheduled, all pro bono, but I started. That is absolutely wonderful. That's a huge celebration. Let's celebrate that today. So let's congratulate Anya on that win. 4 clients is absolutely amazing. And pro bono, whether pro bono or whether they're paid, it's a good start for you. And it's really wonderful to hear that. It's the start of that energy. It's the start of that flow to attract more clients towards your business. Absolutely wonderful work. I'd see lots of comments coming through. Adrian is saying, I recently also stepped out my comfort zone, but it's tough. It's tough, but you're doing it, Adrian. So let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate you stepping outside your comfort zone and making those achievements. It's really wonderful. Adele is saying, I was also able to reach out and ask for help where I wasn't sure how to do something. Another win. Please keep sharing these. Let's celebrate these wins. You're doing some amazing stuff, some amazing work. Invest in yourself and also helping other people. Adrian said, signed a new store last week and another one today. Business is improving for your cookies and your baking, Adrian. That's fantastic. Let's celebrate that today. 2 stores is absolutely amazing. Brenda Lees, hi, I just signed a 4-month contract. What amazing wins. Look at the energy that's in this room today. 4-month contract signed. This is absolutely fantastic. Really great work from absolutely everybody. And I just want to share a big win from Coaching Minds for everybody who was tuned in last week. We had a huge, successful international coaching week. The energy was fantastic. It was absolutely wonderful. And it was all because of you guys that are tuned in today and who can't make it today, but tuned in last week. And Adrian's saying, I'm also slowly distancing myself from an abusive friend. That is also a win. It's difficult, but if you're coming to that understanding, that awareness, and you're taking that action, it's a win. So lots of things to celebrate today. Really great energy. Thank you all for sharing that. And if you're tuning in a bit late, please feel free to share your wins. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small. Just anything, any progress that you're making on what you want to achieve is a win for you. It's the energy that you carry behind that that is going to help you continuously make those wins. So let's recap. Does anybody remember what the 4 laws of habit are? So last session, we talked about the 4 laws of habit building, and a few of you tuned in, were also tuned into the last session. So please let me know in the comments box if you remember any of the 4 laws of habit building. And while we're recapping this, the importance of recapping this is because through the 4 laws of habit building, we can really start to understand and get some tips and tricks for how we can start to implement the habits. So we talked about the 4 laws of habit building from James Clear's book, The Atomic Habits. So if you've read the book, maybe you missed last session, but if you read the book, The Atomic Habits, then you will know or maybe remember 1 or 2 or all 4 of the laws of habit. So whilst you're thinking about that, while the comments are taking time to come through, I can see Donna's tuned in. It's absolutely wonderful to see you here, Donna. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's take a look at what they were, and let's see if you managed to get them right as the comments come through. So the 4 laws of habits and building habits is 1, make it obvious. 2, make it simple. 3, make it attractive. And 4, make it rewarding. Now, this is a good start if you are struggling to implement your habits, if you're struggling to build habits or new habits into your day-to-day routines or into your life, then these 4 laws are good starting points. So making it obvious is all about the cue, making sure that we have access to things that we need in order to carry out that habit. We have things around our house, around our day-to-day, on our phone, reminders, things to remind us to take up that habit, to emphasize on the cue to take up that habit during the day. Second, making it simple is how do we make it easy for ourselves? How do we make it easy for us to really start to implement and build a habit into our day-to-day life? Then we looked at making it attractive, something that we're attracted to, if there's ease in it, we talk about a lot of cognitive ease in cognitive coaching and things like that, but how do we make it attractive so that we want to do it? How do we encourage and get that pull towards wanting to do that habit? And there's ways in which we can make it attractive. And finally, number 4 is make it rewarding. If there's no reward, if we're not getting any satisfaction from that habit, so in the book it's make it satisfaction, but I've changed this to make it rewarding, similar word. But if you make it rewarding, if you feel that satisfaction, you're more likely to repeat that behavior. So we need to see reward, we need to see progress, we need to see satisfaction if we want to continue to implement that habit. So those are the 4 laws. I want to see if anybody's put it in. Nobody was brave enough to have a guess and have a look at that, which is absolutely... This is new for you. Go back to session 18. We went into these in a lot more detail. So make it obvious, make it simple, make it attractive, and make it rewarding. Now, before we go into my 5 top tips for implementing your new habits and strategies for you to start to build and think about how you can implement habits, let me know in the comments box, is anybody struggling right now to implement habits? So they set themselves habits. I want to do this on a daily basis, or I want to do this 3 times a week, or I want to achieve this, and they're not continuing or not managing to carry it out each day. Let me know if you're struggling so I know how we can engage with you today. But I just want to, again, we're looking at James Clear's work from Atomic Habits. So a lot of this is influenced by James Clear. His book is probably the best book out there in the industry, in the market, on habits and how to start to implement them, how to build them. My tips have come from me, my personal experience. I'm going to share a lot of my personal experience with that. But before we jump into that, I want to share you the power of tiny gains. Now, whenever we start to set out a habit or we want to make progress, a lot of us want to go from 0 to 100. We want to jump in and start to run 45 minutes a day or 60 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, not having ran for a long time. Or we want to go from not writing anything towards our book to writing 2 chapters or 3 chapters in a day. We want to take that huge leap from 1 or 2 or 0 to 100 or to 80 or 90. We always want to put in the big work. But when we do that, it can be overwhelming. It can be a barrier. We can talk ourselves out of it quite easy. We don't want to step into that action. We tell ourselves it's too much work and it's harder for us to implement. But if we were to slow that right down, break it right down, look at the power of small actions. If we were just to increase 1% better every single day over a period of a year, so you can see 365 days on there, you will improve yourself by 37.78%. You will see that amount of improvement over a year just by improving 1% every single day. Now, on the other side of things, which is great about this, is if you were going to go 1% worse every day, then you are only going to fall 0.03% behind where you're already at. So essentially, what this shows is if you're performing worse every day at 1%, then you're not going to move. You're going to kind of stay quite stable. But if you were just to make those small improvements over time, over a year, you're going to increase to nearly 40% improvement of where you're at. So this is to emphasize the power of small actions. And what we can take away from this, I've got two examples here. So maybe you want to implement the habit of running every day. Instead of setting yourself 45 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour or half an hour, and then you tell your mindset, I don't have the energy to run 30 minutes today. I don't have the energy to run 45 minutes. You talk yourself out of it. Remember that running for 5 minutes daily is better than not running at all. So setting that big target of 30 minutes or 60 minutes and then missing it every so often or not having the motivation to jump into it, setting 5-minute goals is a lot better for you than not missing and running at all. Second one, reading 3 pages daily is better than not reading at all as well. So maybe you set yourself to read 3 chapters or a chapter a day. You cannot manage that because, it gets late, life is overtaking you that day, you've had extra tasks in your job, you've had to run to do this errand or run to do that, or something's happened in your family, you have to give your time and energy there. Picking up and reading 2 chapters can be very, very, overwhelming. It can be very, a bit of a barrier for us. But if we were just to set ourselves a goal to read 3 pages daily, that's a lot more manageable. And if we were to read 3 pages every day consistently at that 1%, we'd get through that book a lot quicker than if we set this goal and miss most of the days and try to jump in. So never underestimate the power of small actions. That's the key. It's one tip and strategy from today. So with that in mind, the first tip I'm going to share with you in a second is how can you break down your habit? So think of a habit that you want to implement right now. How can you break it down? So if you want to write a new book, for example, instead of reading, you have a lot of chapters or pages you want to implement. How do you break it down instead of trying to write a chapter a day or 1,000 words a day? How do you break it down and start at 100 or 200 words a day? So think about, I don't know what your habits are, feel free to share them, but how can you break it down? Whether it's time, whether it's number, how can you break your habits down? I'm looking at here, some good comments coming through. Lots of people saying hi. Brenda Lee saying me, exercise routine. So that's one habit she's looking to do. What does that exercise routine look like? One thing we need to do is really be specific with our habits. We talked about that when we looked at the 4 laws. Exercise routine is great, but what does it mean? What does that exercise routine look like? The more clarity that we have on what it is we're going to do, the more likely we're going to commit to doing it. If we just say, I'm going to run every day, but we haven't even thought about the running route we're going to take, we haven't thought about where we're going to go, how we're going to track, what the purpose is. If we don't break that down and start to think about the reason, what we're doing and why we're doing it, we're going to struggle. So think about it in a bit more detail there. Adrian says, I'm struggling to go and either run or walk daily, also struggling to do other daily exercises. Thank you so much for sharing that, Adrian. Let's start to think of what it is that you're setting yourself. What's your time that you're looking to do? What's the goal behind walking and going there daily? Donna's saying incorporating more purposeful self-care, but I have a cunning plan, Baldrick. That sounds amazing. It's good that you've got a plan, and I would love to hear from your tips today on how you start to implement these habits of self-care. The biggest small action for me is being kind with my internal dialogue. Again, that can be a small action. Start off small with the kindness and the way in which you talk to yourself. And Adrian is saying also struggling to quit smoking. Now, Adrian, we looked at how we can start to remove bad habits in the last session. Again, we looked at the 4 laws and how we can, and we also looked at the structure of a habit. So the cue, craving, action, and reward. And we looked at how we can reverse those to remove and make it more difficult for us to have access to the bad habits that we want to remove. So we covered that in the last session. Today, we're going to be looking at how we build and implement new habits. So how can you break your habits down? Let me know in the comments box your thoughts, because the first tip that I have for you today is breaking down our habits. Don't make everything overwhelmed. Trust me, I've tried this with so many things and it works an absolute treat. So for the first 1 week or two, make it really small. So if you want to run, so I've got 4 goals here. Maybe you want to implement the habit of meditation. Maybe you want to implement the habit of reading. Maybe you want to implement the habit of working out, or maybe you want to implement the habit of writing. So the first one there, I've got 5 minutes. You start with 5 minutes of meditation. Maybe your goal is you want to meditate for 45 minutes a day. Start small, break it down, start with 5 minutes. Do this for the first 2 weeks, 5 minutes every single day. When you get through the first 2 minutes, increase that. You don't have to go to 20, maybe go to 10. Take the time it needs for you. But this is what I did, and this is what worked for me. When I went to week 3 and 4, I increased it to 20 minutes. Again, there's a lot more behind this. You got to think about the types of meditation. If you're just sitting there in silence, listen to music, all that sort of stuff, or meditation music doesn't help you if your mind's really racing. How do you do a guided meditation? You've got to think about how you start to implement meditations that work for you to allow you to do this. But breaking it down is the first tip. And once you've done 20 minutes in weeks 3 and 4, when you jump to month 2, hit it to the goal that you want to. And what you don't realize is you already subconsciously start to build that habit. And it's actually the hardest part of doing a habit is taking that first step to do it. It's pressing that play button. It's getting to sit down on that meditation cushion. It's getting to the gym. It's getting out there. That is the hardest part. And if we really shorten it down, that hardest part is reduced. And we get there, it becomes easier to increase the time when we've already started. So the first 2 weeks, the progress there is just to start to implement the start and the hard part. Get past that first big hurdle, and then the rest of it comes easy once you've done that. Second one there, habit of implementing reading. Start with 3 pages in the first 2 weeks. Move to 10 pages in weeks 3 and 4, and then month 2, start to read a chapter. Next one, maybe you're implementing workouts. Maybe you want to work out and 4 times a week is your end goal. The first 2 weeks, just start with once a week. Just start with once a week, build that energy up. Again, this is the reason why I asked everybody to share their small wins, because it's the energy that we get behind them that will continue forward. So just get into that habit, get the energy, wake up your body, go once a week. In the 3rd and 4th week, up that to 2 times a week. And then after the first month, when you step into month 2, increase it to 4 times a week. So this is the first tip. Break it down and do this kind of schedule. It really works. Maybe you want to implement the habit of writing. Maybe you've got a book that you want to write, or you just enjoy journaling, or you have a blog, or you just like to write articles, wherever. Then start off with 200 words in the first 2 weeks. Step it up to 500 words in weeks 3 and 4. And then in the second month, hit it to your goal of 1,000 words. So break it down, get past that first barrier by really keeping it small. And then once you get into the habit of breaking that barrier, pressing that play button, attending the gym, sitting on that meditation cushion, picking up that pen, picking up that book, once you get into the habit of doing that, to extend the time becomes so much more easier. I've tried this dozens of times with all my habits. It works an absolute amazing wonders. Anybody else tried this? Anybody else broken down their habits and seen this really work? Adele says, I need to work on reading less, but focus more too. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Adele. Adele says, I told my son not to make me coffee, even if I ask. I need to drink less, not just to drink to get warm. Now, exactly. So that is, again, we're not going to go into detail on that, but a good way to remove the bad habits. That's something we covered last session. Adrian says, a new habit, but also old habit is start drinking tea again, to drink less coffee. So going back to the 4 laws just quickly there, how do you make sure you don't have coffee in your house and you have tea in your house? So that forces you to have to drink tea and you have difficult access to coffee. Again, make it simple to build the habit, but make it difficult to remove it. So in the last session, we looked at how we can reverse that so we can remove those bad habits. Excellent stuff. So first tip is to break it down. Really works. Second one is, how can you use your current habits? So reflective point for you. I'm sure you all have good habits that you've got implemented in your day-to-day. I'm sure a lot of you brush your teeth if you want to go that simple. I'm sure everybody showers, or most of us will shower every day. Simple habits like that. But think of habits. Maybe you work out every day, but you're not really good at meditating. Maybe you read every day, but you're not so good at working out. Think about the current habits that you have that are great. And then what I want to introduce you to, it's another concept. This concept does come from James Clear in his book Atomic Habits. But the concept that really works for me is the tip 2 of habit stacking. The concept of habit stacking. And there's 2 methods. So for me, when I read the book and I started to implement this into my life, I came up with 2 methods. There's one, you can habit stack by building, or you can habit stack by sinking. Now, what do I mean by this? Is if you take method 1 and you want to habit stack by building, then think of a habit that you are really good at doing. So maybe you're really good at going to the gym, or maybe you're really good at reading, or maybe you're really good at journaling. What you do with this good habit is you add or build on the habit that you want to implement immediately after the habit that you're good at doing. So, for example, let's say you want habits of journaling, reading, and meditating. Okay, you're really good at journaling, but you're struggling to meditate and you're struggling to read. What you do is when you set that time, you start the habit stacking by first of all doing the journaling, the habit that you're good at. You then make sure that you do the next 20 minutes after this. There's something, for those of you who've read the 5 a.m. Club, it's kind of synced or linked to the power hour. So 20 minutes of learning, 20 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of personal development or reading. Meditation. So you do the first habit, you then implement straight after this new habit. So this new habit of journaling. So you're good at journaling, and you pick up the book and you read. You spend 10, 20 minutes reading, and then you stack that next habit of wanting to meditate, and you sync them together. So one habit comes after the other, and you take your time to build that. So that's one way in which you can habit stack. The other way in which you can habit stack is by syncing. And what I mean by syncing here is you take something that you enjoy with something that you're struggling to implement. So you can see the guy struggling with a rock there with a thumbs up. Something you like with something that you are struggling to implement in your life, and you sync them together. So, for example, maybe you have an amazing podcast that you love to listen to, okay? You discipline yourself and you sync that, and the habit that you want to install is to go running for 30 minutes every day, okay? That's your habit. So the tip here when you sync is you take something you like and you discipline yourself to only permit yourself to listen to that podcast or that music or whatever it is whilst you're running while you're doing your 30 minutes of running every day. So you take something you like with something you're trying to work in, and you match them together. And you can only do that thing you like if you're continuing that habit. So this is a habit stacking of syncing. So you can build and you can sync. Both of these really work. It depends on how you can tie the 2 together. But think of something you like, think of something you're struggling at. How can you mix them together? How you can stack them together at the same time and sync them? Or how can you build on a good current habit that you have and immediately after perform the habit you're trying to implement? So build or sync. That's tip 2. And when it comes to the comments box, we have Donna saying, I know I'm extremely focused and disciplined for my job. I need to transfer those strategies to practicing self-care and appreciating the fact that I'm worth the effort. And Donna, so just going back to what I mentioned earlier on, we need to be really specific with the habits that we want. So what do these self-care habits look like? How do you really get into detail of defining them? Vijay is saying, yes, starting small has helped me get started. That's really wonderful. It's really good to get the ball rolling. You see that snowball effect with your habits. Priya is saying, start small and be consistent. Make it fun too. So again, that's going to making it attractive. How do we make fun? How do we add that in? Syncing, that habit stacking, doing something we like with something we're not really enjoying, but we know that we need to. Syncing that together makes it fun. We are more inclined to do things that we enjoy rather than things that we don't enjoy. Next question is, how flexible are you with your habits? So reflective question for you to think about. How flexible are you with your habits? Are you a person that's really rigid, that you need to go for a run or a jog or do your workout at 6 a.m. and afterwards at 6:30 or at 7 a.m. you need to do your reading, you need to listen to your podcast, you need to do this? Who's very rigid with their structure and their habits? I was trying that. I'm guilty of that. I used to say at 6 a.m. I'm doing this, 7 a.m. I'm doing this, 8 a.m. I'm doing this. But as soon as you miss one habit, it messes the rest of your day up and your habits. And all of a sudden, you're finding that you need to go to the office and you're running late, and it does not work. So one tip 3 that I learned the hard way, was being flexible with your habit. So what happens? Question for you guys again. What happens when we miss that allotted time we have scheduled for a habit? So let's say you're scheduling your run every day for 7 a.m. or your workout for 7 a.m. or your yoga session or your meditation, whatever it is. If we cannot get to that, let's say we sleep in, we snooze the alarm, we miss it, what happens? What generally happens? What generally happens is that we don't do it. We miss that day. We'll say, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. I hit 7 o'clock. I'm going to get up earlier. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure that I don't miss it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, we have the same unconscious habit. We miss it again. Doesn't work. So one tip that I've found is to be flexible with your habits. And what I mean by this is keep habits flexible and commit to just completing the habit at some point during that day. So I work out every day, but I don't set a scheduled time to work out. It's on my list. I'm going to talk about habit tracking in a little bit's time, but I have a list. And what I do on that list is I tick it and I do it some point during the day. So tip 3 is make it flexible. Tip 4, reflective question. I've realized I'm taking up a lot of time here. This is a long session, but it is important information that's coming through, is how much have you invested in your habit? So if you're struggling, I want you to ask the question, how much have you actually invested in your habit? What do I mean by this? So tip 4 is to invest in your habit. We are more likely to commit to something we have financially invested in. If we haven't got any financial investment to it, then we're not going to commit. So how do we start to invest in our habit? First of all, if you want to get into running and fitness, buy good equipment. Take that first step to sign up to the gym, but then think about how you can buy equipment to pull yourself to the gym. If you want to jog or run, buy yourself some nice running shoes. That investment, that attraction, that is going to help you get that motivation to continue. If you want to work out at home, buy some equipment for your home that you're going to enjoy. Second, if you're journaling or writing, if this is a habit you want, buy a good journal. I forgot to edit that there, but buy a good journal. Buy a journal that's attractive to you, that when you see it, you want to pick it up, you want to write in. Don't just type it on Word and journal on Word all the time, or do it in a bit of scrap paper. Buy something, invest in something that's going to attract you to want to write in it. Second of all, another example. These are just examples. Think about your habit that you really, really want to implement into your life and how you can invest in it so you strengthen that commitment. If you like reading, buy yourself a Kindle. Kindle is attractive. Or if you're like me, I prefer books. Buy a number of books in advance and have them visible so you can see them. You have that attraction to want to pick them up, and you're already invested because you've got them. You realize you have a number of books you've invested. I buy 12 books at the start of every year. I spend over £100, and that's going to be my core reading list for the full year. But because I spent £100, I know it pulls me and strengthens that commitment to read every month. So invest up front. If you want to implement some kind of learning, YouTube is great. You can learn anything on YouTube. You can learn, there's lots of free courses and everything out there. But the problem is people sign up to free courses, people take free things, but they never commit to it because there's no financial investment. So purchase a course. If learning is really important for you and you're struggling to take the time every day to actually study, purchase a course, put some financial investment in it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in our workshop in a couple of minutes' time, because there's ways in which you don't have to physically invest to somebody else or in other things, but there's ways in which you can use your money as an incentive for yourself to help you strengthen that commitment. So invest in your habit. Think about how you can invest in your habit. I'm going to come back to the comment in a second after I've shared tip 5. And the tip 5 is, how do you track your habits? So it's great. I want to meditate every day. I want to do yoga every day. I want to read every day. I want to listen to this podcast every day. But are you tracking your progress? Are you understanding where you are now, where you want to be, and what's happening in between? Tracking your habits is the key. And this is one of the key things that I learned was the first habit. If you really want to become good at implementing new habits, the first thing you need to do is make tracking your first habit. Tracking your habits needs to be the first habit. Every day, I take a look at the habits that I've got to do. At the end of the evening, I have a sheet. We're going to talk about this in a second. I have a journal where I track my habits and I tick off the ones that I've done and ones that I don't get all of them. I've got 7 habits I try and implement every day. time doesn't permit everyone, and I work, but I reflect at the end of the week on where the week went well, where I didn't have time to do this, where I didn't have time to do that, and how I can improve the next week. So I am progressing, I'm tracking, I'm reflecting on my habits because they're important for me, because I understand if I get these habits right, my energy is better, my confidence is better, and I can deliver a lot better as well in my work and my productivity. So you have two things to consider about when you're looking at tracking your habits. You have the where and the what. So where you're going to track it and what are you going to track. So you can get productivity journals, lots of productivity journals out there. I use a law of attraction planner, or a legend planner as well, is equally just as good. I use it for all the stuff that I do every day, my task lists. But there's a little section in the bottom that's a habit tracker. So I have my 7 habits that I want to implement every day, and I tick off whether or not I've done them. But when I go to that, I remember I need to fit in my habit at some point during the day, and I keep it flexible. If you don't want to invest in a planner, there is really great habit tracking apps that do the same thing on your phone, both on Android and iPhone. Download one, look at how it works, and get into the habit of tracking and using your phone every day to check up where you are on your habits. Tracking sheets, lots of tracking sheets you can go and download online. Lots of people offering free tracking sheets. You can download them, print them off, and use them. Or you can design your own. Get a bit of a notebook, get a journal, draw your tracking sheet every day, design your own, go on Canva. Very easy to do. So design your own. So that's the where and the what. The second thing when it comes to tracking your habit is how do you want to track it? Are you going to be ticking off like me that you do it every day, or are you going to progress and track how many minutes you do per day, per habit? How many times per week? Is there another measurement that you want? Are you going to have 200 pages, or are you just going to write how many pages you actually wrote that day with an aim to improve tomorrow? So today I wrote 150, tomorrow I'm going to aim for 250. Let's see, I've spent this much time, I've done this, excellent. How are you going to track that? What's the progress measurements here? Then how are you going to reflect and build on that habit? Continuous improvement, that 1%, 1%, 1%. Reflecting on that and building on that habit really helps. And then finally, how do you identify if you progress, if you're succeeding or if you're failing? So think about how you track that and what that looks like. So the where, the what, the how, and the why. So these are my 5 top tips when you implement new habits that have worked for me for working out, for meditation, for something called Qigong. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but I do Qigong, reading, journaling. It works. These 5 have really worked for me, an absolute treat. So I'm going to go to some of these comments. Donna saying, get back to boxing. It focused my mind, released my frustrations. I was wondering, wonderfully so afterwards, I need to make this a priority. So make it a priority. That's another tip. That's a really good tip there. Thank you so much for sharing that, Donna. And with boxing, it's easy to track the progress. It's very holistic and everything and everyone benefits. Really wonderful. Let's track how you can get back into that. Thank you for sharing that, Donna. So 5 things for you to reflect on, 5 tips for you to think about. Think about where you're missing, where you're lacking. You may be doing a lot of this already, which is fantastic. If you're still struggling, don't forget we've got the workshop in a minute's time where we can organize, we can go deeper into this. And this leads me on to this week's challenge, which is organize your habits and reflect on how you track them. How do you track the improvements more specifically? So go back, if you already tracked them, how are you improving, how are you reflecting, how are they currently looking? I want to leave you with this last quote, which is small steps, big commitment, continuous progress. So keep this affirmation in your mind whenever you're trying to implement a habit. Small steps, big commitment, continuous progress. Small steps, big commitment, continuous progress. With that note, we are going to go into so we're running a little bit late for our workshop, but we're going to jump into it straight away. We're going to dive deeper into our habits. We're going to look at incentives and deterrents. We're going to look at how we can better track our progress, and we're going to develop an action plan from there. And if you missed all the previous sessions, maybe you like what we're talking about, then you can join me in my coaching room. I'm going to share that in a second. And in the next session, we're going to look at the importance of accountability. But more importantly, successful accountability. Accountability is a word that's thrown around a lot, but do we often sit back and reflect on if the accountability functions or partners that we have in place are right for us, and how do we ensure that we have the right accountability functions and partners for what it is we're trying to implement? So as I mentioned, you can become a revolutionary. You can catch up on all the replays, all the past workshops. You can connect with me deeper in my coaching room at hub.coachingminds.co.uk. Just go down to our coaching room session. You can find me there. I would love to connect with you and talk more about what it is you're working on and help you catch up with our previous sessions. And I just want to leave you, if there's any questions, please let me know in the comments box below, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Lara's saying great information to adopt new habits. Thank you so much for tuning in, Lara, and being here. Really wonderful to see you. So that is our 5 habits. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments box. I'll get back to you in the comments. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your wins at the beginning, for all the high energy for today's session, and for sharing a few of the things that you're working on. I know I've gone quite fast, but take the time to reflect and pause and look at the slides from today's session, because these really do help you implement your habits. I want to wish you a wonderful day, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I look forward to catching up with you in our workshop, or if not, at our next session, session 20. Have a great day, guys. Speak soon.